15 different products, tightly integrate them, and then just tell you about it. It's kind of an interesting, like, choose your own journey kind of style discovery. I think they get a kick out of it, I don't know. But I guess when you own half the world, it doesn't matter. Quick survey of the room. Quick survey of the room. Who here works in a Microsoft product almost every day? So you are a Microsoft BI-ite. Oh, wow, I think this is how many healthcare people get drawn to this conference. I was at a show last week doing a similar presentation, and I asked it was 50-50 split, and then I asked the second question, which was how many people work in Power BI on a day-to-day basis? Power BI, still, wow, okay, this is a friendly room. And that room, it was like almost nobody, which was cool, because I felt like I could give people a nugget of, but I had to say, okay, let's start with what is Power BI? So I'll do that a little bit for everybody in the room. But yeah, it sounds like to me, most everybody. And I'm really loud. I'm gonna talk softer, because I think maybe I can turn myself down. I met you for now. Okay, screen. That's me. Nothing, but that's. I'm just kidding. Well, this is who we are. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, both because the requisite don't sell stuff is important. At the same time, I also don't want to. It's not why we're here to talk, but I'm part of a group called Provisions Group. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, and we do lots of different things. One of the things that makes us unique is we're both staffing. We've been in the staffing business for almost 17 years. As well as we're a consulting practice. We have a full-service IT staffing and consulting practice all under one roof. About 40-something folks doing full-time consulting work for us. I live on that side of the business, but anyway, we're Microsoft Gold Certified Partner, which is why we're talking about Microsoft stuff. That said, we don't just do Microsoft, which is kind of why I guess I'm the only guy. I looked over the agenda, and I'm the only guy with a product in my presentation. Whether you use SAS Tabular or Power BI or anything that has Microsoft's name by it, I like it, but I don't care. So that's why, full disclosure, I'm not trying to promote Microsoft technologies or necessarily our practice. So we're going to talk a little bit at the beginning of this conversation about something that's a little bit esoteric and maybe theoretical, but the goal is I can't really provide you clarity, I don't think, about the products that Microsoft provides to do metadata management unless you know what metadata management actually is. So by show of hands, who feels like I say metadata and y'all are like, yeah, I got it, metadata, I understand metadata. Again, it's like the confident, it's the same, by the way, it's the same like 50% of the room that's raising their hand every time. It's like the confident people in the room. Metadata is data about data, right? Okay, good. I'm glad all the people who didn't raise their hand are clear now, right? It's like that's, I'm sorry, you're probably, so yeah, it isn't that simple, right? So let's try again. Let's use Wikipedia, because right, if it isn't clear, you Google and you look Wikipedia. So let's metadata is data information that provides information about other data. That's literally what the. Is that clear to everybody? Because it's not to him. It shouldn't be to you, because that's really confusing. So here's mine. It's a little bit more wordy, but hopefully this will play out and hopefully it's helpful. So metadata is data. I mean, I know this like philosophical word, meta, right? It's like, but no, meta is actual data. And it's used to reference, describe, structure, and to make meaningful. So here's the thing, right? In IT and in data, we frequently are dealing with things that we understand, but our goal as analysts and visualization folks and people who are trying to do a good job communicating complicated things to non-technical people is meaning. Meaning, it's all about meaning. So metadata is really the data applied to other data that without it wouldn't be meaningful or would be less meaningful. So think about a table name. We'll look at examples of this. Descriptive metadata is a type of metadata. Let's think about table names or even just columns. Maybe this is 3 different tables, T1, T2, T3, 3 different tables. Personal address line 1. Anybody worked on tables with personal address line 1? Yeah, it's like everybody in the room. Don't raise your hand. I know it's everybody because yeah, everybody has to report out of an addresses table or a personal table, but every case it's something esoteric. It's ADD_01 per. That's meaningful, I think. But again, I'm a data nerd. Address line 1, that's at least a little bit more meaningful. ADD, this one's my favorite. I actually saw this on the table. ADD_personal_1. I mean, I guess context would probably tell you that's an address, but maybe not. Is it, I don't know, some kind of summation game? I don't know. The point is if you called all 3 of these columns in some sort of descriptive metadata, personal address line 1, that's descriptive, right? I mean, that's the nature of this notion of descriptive metadata is it describes. And so if you can look at, by the way, anybody confused, don't raise your hand. Anybody confused by personal address line 1? Don't raise your hand. Structural metadata, it's this idea that things in IT land are frequently related to each other, but without some help, without some nods, without some actual relationships. Non-IT people, or at least consumers of reports, people who don't live in the nitty-gritty of the data, wouldn't know, right? This is this idea of structural metadata. So if you have purchases, you have activity maybe related to a person in, I don't know, a portal or an e-commerce site, and then you have a customer. All you know, sort of at the data level, typified by IDs across all tables, right? Underscore, I actually led it with an underscore because that's my favorite. When a column has an underscore in it, that's just great. Underscore ID underscore person, probably because just somebody wanted it to show up at the top of the list. Underscore ID underscore person, per ID, and customer ID. Those all relate to each other, right? Because purchases have a single customer tied to them. Activity has a single customer. So this is what we call structural metadata. There's also this idea of administrative metadata, which frequently you all who have designed warehouses or tables that do analytics or anything that's sort of like catching data thrown at it by multiple sources, frequently will add these, right? The load date, the last refresh date, the created. And these are all, they're not really inherently like data that's from the source system frequently. Sometimes it will be because maybe it's data about when the record was created in the source system. But frequently in like a data warehouse context, you're adding these records. And they don't directly relate to the meaningfulness of the data, but they do help a person consuming the report to say, how fresh is this report? When was the last time it ran? When was the last time that the record was touched in the source system? Again, these are all, again, back to my definition, which is admittedly more verbose, but hopefully slightly more meaningful. It's data that makes other data more meaningful, right? So, why is metadata important? Let's talk about three reasons why it's important. One is that tables are built for engineers. English, I love it how we say plain English, so that's the special case. Plain English is what all the commoners speak, right? All the commoners that are going to be consuming your dashboards, all those people lowly down here, right? So plain English is what they speak, right? So in the King's English, you all speak the King's English, right? In order to get that intent of the King's English down to plain English, the commoners who are consuming your reports, you have to communicate intent. Frequently, metadata is a good way to do that. And lastly, again, frequently data comes from multiple systems. I mean, not always. Sometimes you have a source system and the analytics are really bad, and so you're trying to provide better analytics out of that source system. But often when you build an analytics system, when you're building a dashboard, visualization, a report, it's because, oh, okay, that one system in the compendium of 15 that make up the final data in the final report has an analytics tool, but the business user wants to see like this plus this plus this. And so frequently these systems have different languages, different ways to refer to often the same thing. And so metadata provides you, especially when it's pointed at the end, the target reporting system, provide a way to rationalize around a common language. I like things in threes. I also like literature a lot. So this is but hopefully memorable. Metadata reflects requirements, rules, and resources of data. So the idea is metadata makes meaningful and codes requirements, the rules for data, and the resources. And frequently, I mean resources, frequently that's that structural metadata, right? It's the relationship of what that particular data needs with other data. By the way, I did this presentation a week ago, and when I did it at the end, it was the best, it's what you want to hear at the end of a presentation. Somebody said, it was Q&A, right? So I was finished. And he said, okay, so I get it, metadata, I understand it. And then, we'll talk about SAS Tabular and a few other things in a minute. But at the end, he was like, it's like, I got all that, I was really excited, but in the middle, I just don't know, what do you mean, how do they connect? That's a bad thing to hear. So hopefully this next couple slides are gonna help you know how these connect, right? Because the idea is, who here is responsible for reporting to multiple lines of business, right? So like you have different customers, and those customer groups live in different departments. 70% of you, yeah. So you need to do thoughtful metadata management. By the way, maybe I should just hang up the mic and go home. That's an important reality. So if you're not thinking about metadata management, then you probably should. At the same time, let me tell you that everybody involved in this continuum is doing metadata management. That was actually the other thing. Somebody was like, oh, well, are my users doing metadata? Yeah, they are. If they're producing their own reports, then they may not be doing it thoughtfully. They may not be doing so that the metadata is reusable across multiple reports, but they're doing it. I mean, everybody who creates a report that like goes, I don't want it to say, FN_1, I want it to say first name, right? They've now created a business. They've encoded that FN_1 to something meaningful to the business. Now, first name, that's generally like universally recognized, right? But there's lots of things that relate to each one of your departments that are unique to them, meaningful to them, that they might encode that label or encode that relationship in a way that's meaningful to them. But again, everybody's managing metadata. So the goal, if you are serving multiple departments with the same reports or different reports, but all with the same sort of source systems, then yeah, you have to think about metadata. So let's talk about 3 authors of metadata in your organizations. This is Gary. He's the random smart guy. You ever met the random smart guy? He's not an IT guy, nor is he really a data guy, but like, I don't know, like all the other people in the department sort of like drew the long straw and he drew the short straw and he's smart enough he can figure it out. And so Gary, by the way, if there's any Garys in the room, sorry. But Gary, not you, but Gary, the guy who doesn't know much about IT or even engineering really, or building. You're not engineers, I get it. He authors reports, he builds metadata. He's trying to think about how users will consume the stuff he's building. Because frequently, you know, one of the rules we just reviewed is frequently you're building reports for other people. And by the way, that's the general rule. I mean, yes, there are really smart, thoughtful, sometimes analytically driven line managers that build their own reports. But if you're trying to build a report for somebody else, there's a gap. Like you are going to deliver something and then probably don't want to be called every 5 minutes, right? So the more goodness you can put into that thing that makes it make sense to them, actually worse yet, they won't call you and they'll read it wrong, right? So the goal would be, you know, Gary's building that report for somebody else, and so he's going to encode metadata into that report because Gary's busy, he's doing it at nights and on the weekends, he has 3 kids, he's really busy. It's really sad. Anyway, no, I'm sorry. Gary's a happy guy, but he's really busy. He's really busy. Sorry, I like narrative. This is another type of person who writes reports. By the way, you may live in this bucket because frequently you were donned, but you may have also been trained, right? You may be the person, I didn't give this person a name. It was too dangerous after Gary. But yeah, you might be Sally or Sue or Mary or Jane or Jim or Bob or somebody's living in an apartment and they are analytically skilled. They may also have 5 other jobs. But the fact is, they're wearing one of the hats that they're wearing, which they apparently have reasonable training for, is providing reports. So we have our own report writer in sales. I mean, that's so frequently, by the way, who of you are, show of hands, who of you are an embedded report writer? So you live in a business unit, you may even report back to IT, but you're an embedded, you're dedicated to a single division or a single department. Oh, wow, this is awesome. Like shared services abound. Or you just got really scared all of a sudden. Ever since Gary, y'all are scared to raise your hands. So none of you are this, or maybe like 2 of you are this, but the idea is this person is writing metadata. And lastly, enterprise-wide, right? Okay, I'm gonna ask this question. Everybody better raise their hand. Who lives in a enterprise service or a data team or a IT group that writes reports for lots of different departments? Wow, see, not everybody raised your hands. Y'all are getting lazy on me. So, okay, but this group is doing metadata management, whether they're being thoughtful about it or not. So part of the goal of today's conversation, part of the backdrop of today's conversation is to provide a lens of clarity, hopefully, on the Microsoft family of tools to help you do this. So that's, okay. That was the intro, guys. We're just getting started. But no, that's why we're here. And so the idea is, of course, the further on this end of the continuum you get, the less, you know, it's slightly more innovative, but the less global things are, the more non-standardized things tend to be. You know, I say no governance, no global governance. I mean, you might be really keeping track of the reports you're writing if you're that one Gary who lives in there. But I'm saying there's no global sort of perspective on, is this report reusable to anybody else? Is the data meaningful to you in the same way that it's meaningful to somebody across the organization? Yeah, there's none of that. So, and no reuse, right? I mean, again, Gary may be reusing his reports really intelligently, but he's got 6 people he's serving, right? So there's very little reuse at the enterprise level, and then of course on the other end, it's global, it's standardized. Apparently this is where y'all live, right? It's global, it's standardized. There's an enterprise data model somewhere, or 7, or 17. The point is there's some semblance of a data model living somewhere, and presumably the goal would be to drive up reusability. Somebody builds a report, you can reuse it across lots of contexts. That's the goal, that's the dream, So what we're talking about today is Power BI and SQL Server analysis services. You will hear me say SaaS Tabular. That's SSAS, not SAS. Again, that's not meant to be a data joke, but it's hopefully clarifying. It is SaaS Tabular with 2 S's, 3 S's, I can't count, two in a row at the beginning. Both Microsoft products, and then effectively they provide a model-based approach to design, implement, share, and consume metadata. So now I know there's more there, there's in-memory, there's speed. We're gonna talk about a little bit of that, and in fact it's the same subsystem that provides all that, but today's talk is about metadata, so just realize that when I'm talking about these 2 things, that's what they're for, and actually this too. So who here has used and either loathes or loves PowerPivot? Okay, again, wow, all the Power Pivot people are on this side of the room. That was interesting. Yeah, so if you know, by the way, last week, when I did the presentation, it was cute. Somebody walked into the presentation before I started. He was young, very young. He said, how in depth is this going to be? I was like, I don't know. It's like, if you've never heard this before, pretty in depth, but if you haven't, then yeah. So he said, I spend time in all these tools all the time. So he left. He respectfully left. So guys, if you spend time in these tools every day, I'm sorry. Maybe I can give you a little bit of tidbit, a little bit of hope, a little bit of perspective, but this is probably going to be a little bit of review for you. But what is helpful, maybe, is because of the way these products relate to each other. I wish he had stayed. He actually left my presentation, which hurt me a little bit. Oh, I just touched my mic. That's bad news for the recording. Sorry. But yeah, he left. So y'all can leave again. But the point is that all three of these products relate to each other. All three of these products provide, and I'm speaking specifically about PowerPivot, provide access to the same value of being able to manage metadata thoughtfully. So we're going to talk about how that works. So what we're not talking about today, and I'm not unexcited to talk about these topics, we just don't have 4 hours to talk about all of them. We're not talking about Azure. We're not talking about Azure Analytics and Analysis Services. We're not talking about Azure Data Catalog, all three of which are products that I love. But we're not talking about that today. We're also not talking specifically about a thing that gets solved by 365 or Power BI service. I love these things. These are fascinating things. XMLA endpoints, TISML. I mean, these are all great topics. We're just not talking about them today. This is an introduction to Microsoft's approach to metadata management. So again, if you are wondering, I would really love it if I could provide a common way. And again, it sounds like this is most of you, if you're in this sort of enterprise data capability, whether it's that IT or data services team or, again, a risk and audit function or somebody providing an enterprise service to the rest of the group, then yeah, this would be helpful to you. What problem are we solving? So again, these three products are frequently implemented by often different groups. I mean, again, if you're the IT data services team, you're probably playing in Power BI and SAS Tabular or SAS. Maybe not PowerPivot as much, but you may have a thoughtful business user who maybe who Greg got promoted or he's in a different organization now. He uses Power BI, or PowerPivot rather, a lot. And so this idea that he's got power, so different groups implement these tools, often without talking to each other, frequently without knowing that they're related to each other. By the way, who knows, this will help me, but it'll also massively discourage me if everybody raises their hands, so have some grace. How many people know that these three products are related to each other? To a point, okay. I'm sort of seeing the, más o menos kind of thing. So they are, and so hopefully today we'll illuminate how they are, but I would argue, this is my case I'm making, this is my thesis statement, I would argue that they're important, the way they relate to each other is really important. And it's especially important as you try to plan thoughtfully, like which tool are we going to use when and in what circumstance, and which tool would we say, okay, for you, that's not probably the right tool. And so some of this hopefully will help you all maybe parcel when is the right tool to recommend or use. So what do these products all have in common? I'm giving you some hints, but I'd like some class participation. So what do all three of these products have in common? Nobody speak, don't everybody speak at lunch. Modeling. The ribbon, that's amazing because that's not what I was thinking, but that's awesome. Actually, no, because Visual Studio doesn't have a ribbon. So, but good guess. That was actually really good. I hadn't thought about the ribbon. Visual Studio does not have a ribbon, so no, but model is right. So they all have the model, and we're not talking about this model. If you've seen Zoolander, you know this is a model, right? We're not talking about that model. We're talking about the data model, and it's, the files are in fact in the computer. So this is Zoolander nod. I made this joke last week and I realized I'm getting old because almost nobody knew what that was. So, all right, so data model is delivered by a technology called XVelocity. So who here has, I guess I like hand raises. I've got you guys raising your hands a lot. I probably should have you standing up a lot. But yeah, who here has heard of or knows what XVelocity is? Again, very few. Okay, good, yes. Okay, so XVelocity is the engine inside of the three products we looked at earlier. So I don't mean to say that it's powering Excel. Don't leave here and say, oh, the guy told me XVelocity is powering. No. PowerPivot, not Excel. So we realize those are two different things. You don't know the difference. We'll talk about that in a minute. But XVelocity, by the way, don't Google. You can Google for XVelocity, but don't leave here and Google for XVelocity and go, everything this guy talked about is from 2012. I get it. there was this big announcement when they changed the name from Vertipack to XVelocity, and then they subsequently never called it that again. Until recently, I read an article in 2019 that actually called it Vertipack, and I'm like, what planet are you from? Because 2012, they said, anyway. The Microsoft BI, I told you, the Microsoft BI narrative is confusing. So the point is you might Google for SAS Tabular. There's a bigger thing going on in SAS Tabular, but the engine inside of it is Vertipack. Just know that's the case. And it's called XVelocity. I said Vertipack, I meant XVelocity. But XVelocity is what they call that. It's an in-memory engine inside of SAS Tabular. And by the way, one of the reasons, I'll tell you why, one of the reasons why it will be called SAS Tabular anywhere you Google is because of what I'm about to share. So model-based tables, so the idea is when you build, you have this metadata model, right? You have this model of, I'll call them objects that relate to other objects. They're modeled as tables, but of course we know the relational database people in the room just got a little nauseous because we're not talking about database tables, we're talking about model tables. Why they chose the same name? Well, because it's meaningful until it's not. Anyway, the point is you model these entities or these objects or whatever you want to call them as tables, even though they're not really tables. Supporting descriptive and structural metadata primarily, though you can in fact use, of course, help produce or support administrative metadata as well. It's also the technology, this is by the way an aside, I should have put parentheses because it's not on topic. We're not talking about SQL data warehouse, but it is actually also the memory optimized say that 5 times fast. Column store or index is also powered by XVelocity. So kind of what does this have to do with Power BI and Excel Power Pivot? Well, as it turns out, SAS Tabular models are embedded. I don't know if anybody ever like taken a Power BI PBIX file? This is like stuff you do at home, I'm sure. SAS Tabular, if you went rifling through, I actually meant to go find